Did you know that two people living in neighboring villages in Tanzania can be more genetically different from each other than a person in Norway is from someone in Japan? That families separated by oceans can share more DNA than families separated by a single road in Africa? This isn't metaphor. This isn't exaggeration. This is genetics. And it reveals something extraordinary about who we are and where every human on Earth truly comes from. Africa is the most genetically diverse continent on the planet. Not slightly, not marginally, by an overwhelming margin. So vast that all the genetic diversity found everywhere else in the world represents only a small subset of what already exists within Africa alone. Every variation you see outside Africa, eye color, hair texture, height, skin tone, all of it is drawn from a much larger genetic library that was written first on African soil. This isn't poetry. This is science. To understand why, we have to go back, not to the beginning of civilization, but to the beginning of humanity itself. Around 300,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans emerged in Africa. Homo sapiens, us. For nearly 200,000 years, humans lived only on the African continent. During that immense stretch of time, people adapted to deserts and forests, mountains and coasts, savannas and river valleys. Generation after generation, small genetic changes accumulated. Think of humanity's DNA as a massive book, written letter by letter over time. The longer a population exists in one place, the more additions that book goes through. New variations appear. Old ones remain. The story grows deeper. Africa is where that book was written first and longest. Then, between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, something changed. A relatively small group of humans left Africa. Maybe a few thousand individuals. Maybe fewer. They carried with them only a fraction of Africa's genetic diversity. Imagine Africa as a jar filled with 1,000 different colored marbles, each one a unique genetic variation. When humans left the continent, they didn't take the jar. They took a handful. That handful went on to populate the entire world. Those descendants spread across the Middle East, into Europe and Asia, across the oceans into the Americas and the Pacific. Every non-African population today descends from that small group. Which means this: all genetic diversity outside Africa comes from a limited sample of African diversity. Everything else, the vast majority, remained behind. This is why geneticists see the deepest roots of the human family tree in Africa. Why African populations contain older lineages, more variation, and greater complexity than anywhere else on Earth. Why two Africans can be more genetically different from each other than a European is from an East Asian. Africa is not one population. It never was. It is hundreds of populations, thousands of histories, tens of thousands of years of adaptation, movement, isolation, and mixing, all before anyone ever left the continent. The San people of southern Africa carry some of the oldest genetic lineages known to science. East African populations display extraordinary genetic diversity shaped by long human continuity. West and Central African groups retain variations that never left the continent at all. This diversity is humanity's deep memory, still living, still breathing. And this is where a powerful truth emerges. The idea of race, as we've constructed it, collapses under genetics. Because the deepest human differences exist within Africa, not between Africa and the rest of the world. What we call racial differences outside Africa are recent, shallow branches on a much older tree. We divided humanity backward. When science looks at our DNA, it tells a different story, one of shared origin, shared ancestry, shared humanity. Every person alive today carries Africa within them. Not symbolically, not culturally, genetically. Your ancestors walked African soil. Your DNA remembers it. This doesn't make Africans special. It makes Africa foundational. The source, the beginning, the place where the full spectrum of what it means to be human first unfolded. And yet, for centuries, the story was told in reverse. Africa was portrayed as peripheral, as lacking history, as disconnected from human achievement. But the science makes that narrative impossible to defend. You cannot understand humanity without Africa, because Africa is where humanity became human. When geneticists study disease, adaptation, and evolution, they return again and again to African populations, because that's where the full story lives. Studying only non-African populations is like reading the last chapter of a book and pretending you know the plot. Africa is not a footnote in the human story. It is the first chapter, and there is something deeply unifying in that truth. Something humbling, something powerful. The differences we argue over, skin color, language, borders, are surface details painted onto a shared foundation. Beneath them lies a common origin, a shared ancestry, a single beginning. We are one species, one family, one story, a story that began in Africa and spread across the world. That truth isn't political. It isn't ideological. It's written in your cells, in every strand of your DNA, in the very code that makes you human. Africa is the birthplace of everyone. And once you understand that, truly understand it, you realize something profound. No matter where we live, no matter what we look like, no matter what name we give ourselves, we all come from the same home.